What would you do if your eldest child, the one you raised, the one you trusted, slowly tried to poison you and later murdered your husband just to get your inheritance? My name is Eleanor Whitcombe, and if you'd asked anyone in our little Connecticut town about me a few years ago, they'd have told you I was a retired teacher's wife, comfortable, sensible, maybe worth a few million from good investments. What no one knew, not my friends, not my neighbors, not even my own husband, Richard, was that I inherited a fortune from my father's shipping company. The business he built in the 1970s quietly ballooned into an estate worth over $50 million. I never flaunted it. My father taught me that wealth should feel like a safety net, not a spotlight. So I kept it understated. An old colonial home, modest cars, tasteful clothes. We looked like any upper-middle-class couple who just managed their money well. Richard and I raised 3 children. Our eldest, Vanessa, is 44 now. Then there's Claire, 39, married with 2 little ones and another on the way. And Michael, 36, also married with 2 kids. My grandchildren are the light of my life. Claire and Michael live out of state these days, each in small houses packed with toys and chaos. Both families decided it made more sense for one parent to stay home with the little ones, so they're essentially single-income households in a world that doesn't make that easy. That's why, for years, I've quietly helped them. A few thousand here for medical bills, a fund for college, a mortgage payment when the boiler breaks at the worst time. Nothing they asked for, just money appearing when they needed it most, no strings attached. I never announced it as some grand gesture. I simply wired the funds through our wealth management firm with careful notes attached for tax purposes and my own conscience. In my mind, I was doing what my father would have wanted, using the family wealth to secure the next generations. Vanessa knew I helped them. She just didn't know how much. And to her, any help that didn't go to her first was an insult carved into stone. She'd been different since she was a teenager, always reaching for the shiniest circle, the most expensive handbag, the highest status man in the room. If it wasn't glamorous, Vanessa didn't see the point. She married a wealthy businessman in her 30s, then cheated, then signed a prenup she'd barely read. When the divorce came, she walked away with almost nothing. And somehow, in her mind, that was also my fault. "You could have warned me about the prenup," she snapped at me once over brunch, swirling her mimosa like it had personally offended her. "You knew what I was signing." "You wouldn't have listened," I replied, setting my coffee down. "You told me you didn't want to jinx the fantasy with paperwork." "Because I thought my own mother would have my back," she hissed. "But you've always had a soft spot for the other 2. You pour your money and your attention into their families and toss me scraps." I took a breath. "Vanessa, I've never tossed you anything. I paid off your credit card debt twice. I helped you when you moved after the divorce. I co-signed on that condo." "Don't act like you're generous," she cut in. "You're sitting on millions and pretending the rest of us should be grateful for crumbs. I'm your firstborn. If anyone deserved a real start in life, it was me." Her words lodged in my chest. It wasn't the first time she'd said something like that. Underneath all her expensive perfume and rehearsed smiles, Vanessa carried a deep belief. As the eldest, she was owed more attention, more love, more money. Claire and Michael never spoke about inheritance. They joked about my secret billions sometimes, but it was always in that teasing way adult children use when they still hope their parents live forever. They were too busy wrestling toddlers and paying bills to care about theoretical wealth. Our phone calls were about nap schedules and school plays and scraped knees. And when they apologized for visiting so rarely, I always said the same thing. You're raising families. That's the most important work there is. We're fine here. The truth was, I didn't ask them to visit more because they couldn't. They worked hard, they were exhausted, and time off wasn't something they could magically create. Vanessa, however, had nothing but time. Time and resentment. Then, a few years ago, Richard's health began to falter. At first, it was small things: shortness of breath, fatigue, a persistent cough. Eventually, the diagnosis came: chronic heart failure with complications. He needed oxygen at night, monitoring, and frequent visits from a home nurse. The machines were loud, the tubes invasive, the schedule relentless. Our bedroom became a makeshift clinic. After one particularly restless month, his doctor suggested we set up a dedicated medical room for him so he could sleep without worrying about disturbing me. So Richard moved into the room across the hall. We kissed goodnight in doorways, holding hands a moment longer than usual, then went to our separate beds. We joked about high school again, sneaking kisses in the hallway, but we both felt the distance. I missed his breathing next to me. I missed rolling over and finding his hand in the dark. I missed the casual intimacy of 39 years of marriage. It was around then that I called Vanessa. "Sweetheart," I said over the phone, "I know you're between things right now. Would you consider spending more time here? Your siblings are swamped with work and the kids, and your father, he'd love the company." "Ah," Vanessa sighed dramatically. "So Claire and Michael get their little suburban family lives, and I get nurse duty?" "You'd be helping us both," I said, "and we can afford to pay you something for your time if that makes it feel more fair. I'd like someone in the house who isn't here to draw blood." There was a pause. I could hear the mental abacus turning. "You'd pay me?" "We'd compensate you," I clarified. "Not as an employee, as our daughter helping us. Just enough to make it easier for you to step away from whatever it is you do with your days." "What I do," she said, voice chilling slightly, "is survive in a world that keeps rewarding everyone else but me." "Then let us make it a little easier," I replied. "Fine," she said. "I'll come by a few days a week. But I'm not a nurse, Mom. Don't expect miracles." "I don't," I told her. "I just expect you to show up." She arrived the following Monday. Designer sunglasses, perfect hair, a suitcase too big for a few days. She swept into the hallway like the house had been waiting for her. "Well," she said, gazing around, "still pretending you're middle class, I see." "We like our life simple," I replied, taking her coat. "We don't need marble floors to feel secure." "You don't," she muttered. "Some of us wouldn't mind trying." I led her to Richard's room. He was sitting up in bed, oxygen tube in his nose, reading a worn mystery novel. "Look who's here," I said softly. "Your eldest." Richard's face lit up. "Nessie," he said, using her childhood nickname. "Come give your old man a hug before the nurse steals all my vital signs." Vanessa leaned in, careful not to smudge her makeup. "You look okay," she said. "That's the nicest thing a cardiologist has said to me all year," he quipped. I watched her body language, how she glanced around the room, taking in the equipment, the charts, the medication lists taped to the wall. It wasn't concern I saw, it was calculation. In the days that followed, Vanessa slipped into a routine. She helped the nurse with small tasks, fetched water, occasionally sat with Richard while I cooked. She complained often, but she showed up. For a while, I let myself be grateful. Then, one afternoon, I asked her to help me organize some of Richard's insurance files in the study. There were stacks of envelopes, investment summaries, medical bills. I left her there for 10 minutes while I took a call from Claire. "Mom, I'm so sorry we can't come up this month." Claire's voice came through the speaker, frazzled and apologetic. "Ethan's got that new project, and the kids, Milo just started preschool, and I feel like I'm juggling 12 glass balls." "Stop apologizing," I told her. "You're doing exactly what you should be doing. Your father and I are fine. Vanessa is here more now." "Vanessa?" Claire repeated. "Is that good?" "It's something," I said. "We're managing. We'll call Dad tonight, okay? The kids want to show him the volcano they made." "He'll love that," I said. "Take care of yourself, darling." When I returned to the study, Vanessa wasn't at the desk. The files were still spread out. A few were open to pages I didn't remember opening. "Nessie?" I called. "Up here," she shouted from my bedroom. My bedroom, my laptop. I climbed the stairs, each step feeling heavier. She was sitting on my side of the bed, one leg crossed over the other, my laptop open in front of her. Her face was frozen in an expression I couldn't read, somewhere between shock and triumph. "What are you doing?" I asked, keeping my voice light. "Checking my email?" she said. "You were already logged in." But that's not what I found. My stomach dropped. "Vanessa, my email is private." "So is hiding $50 million from your entire family," she snapped, spinning the laptop toward me. On the screen was an email from our wealth management firm, summarizing our overall portfolio. The number, $54,800,000, glared back like a confession. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Not because of the money, but because she was looking at me like I'd strangled her dreams myself. "You've been sitting on this," she said, tapping the screen, "while I scrape by, while I drown, while you help Claire and Michael with their little perfect family lives, and you let me think you were just comfortable. That money isn't a pile of cash," I said slowly. "It's tied up in investments, trusts, long-term holdings. It's meant to secure the future for all of you, and I never wanted it to define us. Money can destroy families." "Furious, Mom," she hissed. "You already destroyed this one. You made them your project. You made me your problem. I'm your firstborn. This should have been mine." "It was never someone's," I said. "It's a responsibility, not a prize. And you are not the only child in this family." "Could have fooled me," she muttered. "You've been secretly underwriting their fairy tale lives for years, while I'm out there fighting for a seat at the table." "Vanessa, you chose the table," I snapped, my voice sharper than I intended. "You married money, you gambled on charm and beauty, and you ignored every warning anyone ever gave you. That isn't my fault." "But it was your job to protect me," she shot back, "to invest in me, your attention, your time, your money. Instead, you spread it around like charity." "I loved all of you," I said quietly. "I still do." She closed the laptop slowly. "Well, maybe it's time you started proving it." Something in her tone made a chill run down my spine, but I told myself it was just shock, hurt. She'd process it and move on. I was wrong. Over the next weeks, Vanessa became strangely attentive. She insisted on making my tea every afternoon. She hovered in the kitchen, watching me drink it, smiling too widely. At first, I was touched. Then, I began to feel off. Not sick exactly, just disconnected, foggy. I'd forget what I'd walked into a room for. Words slipped away mid-sentence. My mood swung wildly between calm and anxiety. I feel like I'm losing my mind, I admitted to Richard one evening as I tucked his blankets around him. Like something's dissolving. His eyes sharpened. "You've been under a lot of stress," he said, "but if you think it's something else, we'll get it checked." We did. Blood tests, scans, neurological exams. Everything came back within normal range for your age, Mrs. Whitcombe. It was the most invalidating sentence I'd ever heard. But when, after a particularly bad spell, they admitted me to the hospital for observation, something strange happened. I started to feel better. The fog lifted, my thoughts sharpened, the tremor in my hands eased. Within days, I felt more like myself than I had in months. "Maybe it's your home environment," one doctor suggested gently. "Mold, air quality, something we haven't identified yet. Sometimes it's not the body, it's the space." When I returned home, that stuck with me. The house suddenly felt heavy, oppressive, like something toxic had seeped into the walls. I told Richard, "Maybe it's time we do what the kids have been hinting at for years. Sell this big old place. Downsize. Something newer, safer." He nodded slowly. "I've had a good run with these creaky floors," he said, "but if it's hurting you, we let it go." Breaking the news to Vanessa was delicate. "We're thinking of selling the house," I told her over dinner. "Moving somewhere smaller, easier to manage. Your father's care will be simpler there, and—" "So I uprooted my life to come here, and now you're just done?" she snapped. "What happens to me?" "You go back to your own home," I said. "This was always temporary, Vanessa. Your siblings have their hands full with young children. You were able to step in, and we're grateful, but this isn't permanent." "Of course," she scoffed. "They get houses and tuition and secret transfers, and I get temporary." "They get support because they are supporting others," I said, "raising families. You've chosen a different path. I've helped you when you needed it." "Not like you helped them," she bit out. "You keep acting like I'm some stranger who stumbled into your charity fund. I am your eldest daughter. I was supposed to be your legacy." Something inside me snapped into place. "You are not a throne to be inherited," I said quietly. "You are a person, and the woman you have chosen to be, that was never mine to build." Her eyes flashed. "You're going to regret talking to me like that," she whispered. I'd remember that sentence later, long after the night she almost killed me. We sold the house within a few months and moved into a smaller, newer home closer to the medical center. Richard's new room was set up with his equipment. Mine was just across the hall. Fresh paint, clean air. I told myself it would be a fresh start. We planned a small family gathering to bless the new house. Just us, no nurse on duty that evening. Richard insisted on sitting at the dining table like old times. Claire and Michael dialed in via video call, kids shrieking in the background. We propped the tablet at the end of the table so everyone could sit together. Vanessa arrived fashionably late with a bakery cake and the faint smell of expensive perfume. "Congrats on the downside," she said, eyes sweeping the modest living room. "Very cozy." "Cozy is just another word for easier to clean," I replied with a small smile. "Good thing," she murmured. wouldn't want you overexerting yourself in your fragile state." I let it slide. The kids were excited, babbling on the screen. Richard was smiling. Even if breathing looked like work tonight, I wanted peace. After dinner, as I cleared plates, Vanessa followed me into the kitchen. She took a bottle of sparkling water from the counter, uncapped it, and poured it into a glass. I didn't think much of it until I noticed how carefully she stirred it with a spoon, eyes narrowed, body angled slightly away from me as if shielding something. "Here you go, Mom," she said, turning back with a bright smile. "Hydrate the queen of the castle." Richard shuffled into the doorway at that moment, leaning on his cane. His eyes flicked from the glass in her hand to my face. Something dark moved behind them. Vanessa reached out to hand me the glass. For a split second, her fingers trembled. Then Richard stumbled forward. He bumped into her arm with just enough force to send the glass flying. It shattered against the tile, water fanning across the floor. "Dad!" Vanessa exclaimed. "You scared me half to death." "Gravity and I are in a long-term relationship," he joked weakly. "Sorry, Ellie. I'll pay for a new glass out of my pension." I laughed with them, but my heart was pounding. The timing had been too perfect, the look on his face too intent. Later that night, after everyone had signed off and Vanessa had gone to her room, I stepped into Richard's. "Did you really trip?" I asked quietly. He turned his head slowly. "No," he said, "I didn't." "Richard." "Ellie, listen to me," he said. "I've been watching her. The way she makes your drinks, the way she hovers. I didn't want to believe it, but something's wrong." "She's our daughter," I whispered. "She's angry. She's entitled. She's difficult. But she wouldn't." "Wouldn't she?" he asked gently. "After what she found out? After the way she talks about the money? I'm not accusing. I'm observing. And what I see terrifies me." Tears filled my eyes. If you're right, if she's capable of that, I don't know how to live with that. "You won't have to," he said. "Let me handle it." I didn't know then what handle it meant. I only knew that in the weeks that followed, Richard seemed to have quiet conversations when I wasn't around. Phone calls that stopped the moment I entered the room, emails he quickly closed. One afternoon, I overheard him speaking in low tones to someone in his room. "I need you to do for her what we used to do for clients," he murmured. "Dig, discreetly. Financial records, employment history, the works." It hit me then. He was investigating Vanessa. A few days later, he told me the truth. "She's been stealing from her company," he said quietly, "for years. Inflated reimbursements, fake vendors, phantom travel. It's extensive." I sank into the chair by his bed. "Oh my God," I whispered. "She could go to prison." "She should," he said. "But if she walks away now, if she leaves you alone, if she never comes back into this house, maybe I don't have to be the one to start that fire." "She's still our daughter," I said weakly. "I don't want her destroyed. I want her to stop." "So do I," he replied. "That's why I'm going to give her a choice." He called her over the next day. I listened from the hallway, my heart in my throat. "Vanessa," he said, his voice unusually cold, "I know what you've been doing at work." "I have no idea what you're talking about," she said. "I work harder than anyone at that company." "I've seen the files," he replied. The fake invoices, the doctored statements, the bogus consulting fees. You're not clever enough to hide the trail from people who used to do this for a living.
You dug into my life? She snapped. You spied on me?
I protected my wife, he said, and I'm offering you a deal. You walk away. You leave this house. You stop circling your mother like a vulture. You build a life somewhere else. If you do that, I won't share what I know.
You'd blackmail your own daughter? She spat.
He snapped back. And you'd poison your own mother? I'd stop a thief from hurting my wife, he replied. Call it what you like. There was a long silence. I could imagine her face, eyes narrowed, lips pressed together, mind racing.
You're both going to regret this, she finally whispered. You have no idea what you're starting.
She left that day. I told myself that was the end, that whatever rot had been growing would now crumble and fall away. I was wrong again. Weeks passed. Richard's health declined steadily. The episodes of shortness of breath became more frequent. The nurse came more often. Nights felt longer. We talked a lot in those late hours. About the children when they were small, about the first house we bought, about my father, and the way he'd shaken Richard's hand the first time they met, as if weighing his soul. Do you ever regret not spending more? Richard asked one night, his voice weak but curious. Taking more trips, buying more things. You could have had anything, you know. I have everything that mattered, I said, squeezing his hand. The rest would have just been noise. He smiled. Then I did something right. The last time Vanessa visited, she showed up without warning. No suitcase this time, just a large handbag and a hardness in her eyes I'd never fully seen before. You're here, I said, surprised, opening the door. I heard Dad took a turn, she said. Figured I'd say goodbye, since you've both made it very clear I'm not welcome long-term. No one said you weren't welcome, I replied. We just asked you to give us space. Space, she echoed. Right, that's what you call it. I let her in. She went straight to Richard's room. I stayed in the hallway, listening. Nessie, he said, sounding surprised, didn't expect to see you. Well, I didn't expect my own father to threaten to ruin my life, she said, but here we are. I gave you a way out, he replied. You chose not to take it. You chose her, she hissed. You always chose her. Her values, her vision, her favorite little replacements with their perfect little families. I was born first. I was supposed to be the center of this story. You were born first, he agreed. And somewhere along the way, you decided that made you more deserving than everyone else. That isn't how love or legacy works. Legacy? She repeated. You're going to talk to me about legacy when she's been wiring my inheritance away to the others for years? You both made me the villain long before I earned it. We didn't make you anything, he said quietly. You chose who to become. There was a pause. When she spoke again, her voice was frighteningly calm. If you're so sure about my choices, she said, then you know I can live with whatever comes next. I don't know exactly what happened after that. I only know that the nurse wasn't scheduled that night, and I fell asleep earlier than usual, exhausted from weeks of worry. In the morning, the house was quiet. Too quiet. I went to Richard's room. He lay still, his face unnaturally relaxed. His oxygen tube was in place. His monitor was off. Richard? I whispered, touching his shoulder. His skin was cool. The grief hit in one crushing wave. I don't remember much of the next hours. Calling the doctor, the funeral home, Claire and Michael. The sound of their cries over the phone, the kids asking, "Where's Grandpa?" in tiny voices that shattered me. Everyone said it was natural, expected, the end of a long, brave struggle. They told me he'd gone peacefully in his sleep. I wanted to believe them. A few days after the funeral, 2 of Richard's old colleagues showed up at my door. Men I hadn't seen in years, dressed in dark suits that suddenly seemed too serious for my living room. "Eleanor," one of them began, "Richard asked us to look into something before he passed. We think you should know what we found." They told me about Vanessa's fraud in detail, the falsified expense reports, the siphoned funds, the shell accounts, the pattern that was no longer deniable. My chest felt hollow. He didn't tell me everything," I murmured. "He was trying to protect you," the man said. "But there's more. He also asked us to keep an eye on him medically. He was worried that if something happened suddenly, it might not be natural." "What are you saying?" I whispered. "We think you should request an autopsy, Eleanor," he said. "Just to be sure. We can't prove anything, but the timing of her visits, the change in his expressions when he spoke about her, it felt wrong." I stared at the framed photo of our family on the mantel, Richard holding baby Vanessa at the beach, sunlight in her curls, sand stuck to her cheeks, a lifetime ago. "I'll request it," I said. The autopsy results came back weeks later. The doctor's office called me in, asked me to sit down. "Mrs. Whitcombe," the coroner said gently, "your husband's heart was weak. Yes, but that is not what killed him." The room tilted. "Then what did?" I rasped. "The findings show clear signs of asphyxiation," he said. "He was smothered, likely with a pillow or soft object. There are no defensive wounds, no external injuries. Given his condition, he probably couldn't fight back." My lungs refused to work. "You're saying someone killed him?" "I'm saying his death was not natural," he replied. "I'm sorry." My first thought was rage. My second was denial. My third was a hollow kind of clarity. I knew who had been there that night. But knowing is not the same as proving. Vanessa was careful. There were no fingerprints, no witnesses, no cameras. What I did have was everything Richard's colleagues had gathered about her work. A different kind of crime, a different path to justice. I took those files home, printed them, organized them, highlighted them until the pages glowed with guilt. Then I sent them, every last document, to her employer, anonymously. No threats, no demands, just the truth. The investigation moved quickly. Vanessa was questioned, suspended, then arrested. Wire fraud, embezzlement, falsification of records. The charges piled up like the bills she'd once forged. The first time I saw her after that was through thick glass at the detention center. "You did this," she hissed, eyes wild. "I know it was you." "No, you did this," I replied softly. "Years of it. I just stopped pretending not to see." "Mom, listen to me," she said, tears gathering but not quite falling. "You can fix this. You have the money. You can hire lawyers, pay restitution, make this all go away. 15 years, they're saying. 15 years in federal prison. I'll be middle-aged when I get out." "You already are," I said. "This is not happening to a child."
"You owe me," she shouted, palms slamming against the glass. "You owe me everything. I am your firstborn. You were supposed to build me up, not tear me down. This, that money, that life, it was supposed to be mine." I looked at her for a long moment, at the woman who had grown from the little girl in that beach photograph into something sharp and hollow. "You think being born first made you entitled to my love more than your brother and sister?" I said. "To my time, to my money. But love isn't a birthright auction, Vanessa. It's a choice you make every day. And you chose yourself, over and over, even when it cost other people everything." "Please," she whispered. "If you help me, I'll change. I swear it. I'll be the daughter you always wanted. Just don't leave me here." "You killed your father," I said quietly, "and before that, you tried to kill me. I don't need you to become the daughter I always wanted. I need you to face the woman you chose to be." "You're a monster," she choked out. "You're choosing money over me." "No," I replied. "I'm choosing truth, and your siblings, and your nieces and nephews, and the memory of the man you suffocated." I stood. "Goodbye, Vanessa." The trial was swift. The evidence was overwhelming. The judge sentenced her to 15 years in federal prison, citing the scale and duration of her fraud. She looked for me when the verdict was read. I did not go. Afterward, I sat in my lawyer's office, the weight of decades of secrecy pressing in. We worked our way through the numbers, the trusts, the estate plans that had always been theoretical. This time, it became real. I divided nearly everything between Claire and Michael, enough to pay off their homes, secure their children's educations, cushion their futures so they would never feel the kind of desperate scarcity that warps a soul. I sent a smaller portion to some cousins in a nearby town who'd always shown up for family gatherings with casseroles and sincere hugs, never once asking what my portfolio held. A percentage went to charity, scholarships for students who grew up like my father did, in cramped apartments with big dreams and no safety net. For myself, I kept $5 million, enough to live comfortably, to travel a little, to have help when I needed it, enough to feel secure without feeling bloated. And then I did something my children never expected. I told them I wanted to move. "To where?" Michael asked, eyebrows raised on the video call. "Florida? Everyone your age seems to be heading there." "I am not everyone my age," I said. "I was thinking Southern California, somewhere by the beach." "You? On the West Coast?" Claire blinked. "Your father and I always talked about retiring near the ocean," I said. "We never quite made it, but I don't see why I shouldn't keep at least part of that promise. And it would be nice to be closer to you both as you raise your families, if you're willing." Claire's voice wobbled. "Mom, of course we're willing." "As long as you don't show up every day unannounced," Michael joked. "We love you, but we also love naps." "I'll schedule my interference," I promised. So I sold the Connecticut house that still smelled faintly of ghosts and hospital disinfectant. I packed my life into boxes and flew west. Now, in the mornings, I walk along a beach instead of a suburban sidewalk. The air tastes like salt and possibility. Seagulls argue overhead. The sun rises over a horizon that feels open, not haunted. Sometimes I think of Vanessa, of the little girl with sand stuck between her toes, of the teenager rolling her eyes, of the woman pounding her fists against the glass, screaming about what she was owed. I grieve her, not the woman she became,
but the one she never allowed herself to grow into. But I do not regret my choice. Money didn't turn her into what she is. It simply revealed it. My name is Eleanor Whitcombe, and this was The Last Straw. If you enjoyed this story, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe.